2021 trade webinar. My name's Charlotte Smith and I'm going to be guiding us through the next hour or so. We have some great speakers for you to hear this afternoon. Sarah Calcutt will be standing in for Ali, who is unfortunately unable to be with us this afternoon. We'll also hear from Professor Louise Manning, who will share some insights into sustainability in this sector. And then they will both join James Simpson, Tony Harding and Ben Bardsley for our panel session. So quite a lot to get through in a short amount of time. Please, though, don't turn off, don't wander off, don't go for a cup of tea. We do need your input. We very much welcome your questions, particularly for our panel session. Now, to ask a question, it's very easy. If you just hover over the bottom of the Zoom screen, you will see a little bubble that is chat. If you just click on that, then you can type a question into the chat box. We will particularly love you if that question is short and concise. And if you want to aim it at a particular member of our panel, then just make that clear. Just to let you know, this session is being recorded and it will be available to watch again. So our agenda today, discussing the critical issues facing British top fruit growers, the strides they're taking to become a world-leading sustainable industry, delivering a top-class product. Well, let's kick off then with some details of the 2021 season with Sarah Calcutt, the Operation Director of British Apples and Pears.
Good afternoon. Thank you everybody for joining us this afternoon. It is really important that we can have these conversations. Our plan today is to take up no more than an hour of your time. I am really conscious it is Friday. You will have I'm going to start actually with the weather because farmers have to start with the weather. You have no doubt heard quite a lot of talk around weather so far in 2021. In reality, it is too early for us to talk about the frost damage in Europe and to see whether that is actually replicated in the UK. The board and the Promcom for British Apples and Pears are going to meet in June, and that will actually be able to enable us to discuss the crop potential, and we'll be in a much better position by then to make some informed statements. What we do know, of course, is that we had a really lovely winter. It was cold, which is always great for orchards, and we are planning on delivering exactly what the consumer is looking for: great tasting British apples and pears. My short segment now is about our PL plans for the season ahead, how we're going to be launching the season on the 4th of October. But if you think we've missed something in this presentation, please let me know. We want to work with all retailers to help sell more British fruit. Now, this chart is very familiar to most of us on this call. The red bar represents the total grocery market share, and the green bar represents total sales of British apples and pears. As you can see, there's some really strong performers on here. We would really like to work with everyone across the board to see that that green line will overtake the red one. The growers are up for it. Homegrown fruit is definitely more than capable of outperforming others that will possibly have travelled a lot further. Arguably, we'd also really love to see that other segment unpicked. At a 20% market share, it's really clearly the home of some outstanding supporters of British fruit. We're going to be making some substantial investment this season in assisting consumers find packs of British fruit on the shelf and online. This is going to be including all the ranges, especially those that have a change of varieties through the season, and more of that in a little while. So we have conducted quite a lot of sort of consumer insight research this season just to ensure that our campaign is doing everything it can to help sell the British crop. The campaign is driven always by what the consumer really wants, things that they care about, and now of course things they're caring more about following the last 12 months. We have conducted a really detailed analysis of consumer insight, and that has developed our campaign for the season ahead. We've looked at Kantar data, we've taken a deep dive into consumer media and retailer reporting, and have identified some really clear priorities. Of course, there is food and plastic waste. COVID has delivered a focus on farming, buying British, provenance, food miles and plant-based diets, all of which are very relevant to the British top fruit crop. Healthier food choices, of course, are a major concern now. We're all much more aware of sustainability. What is in season has again gained some traction, and the whole issue around the transparency about where and how food is produced is right at the forefront of consumer thinking. And of course, a key and consistent messaging has been through environmental ethos. Brands that have a sustainability, are really truly sustainably minded, not just about using a green initiative as a tick box, but about consumers who are really concerned that we might be importing environmental damage. So this investigation has driven everything that we have developed for the season ahead, and it is driving the working and the messaging throughout the campaign that we are putting forward across the long term as well. So we have started by commissioning a report into sustainability and into our industry, which will span several editions over a number of years as our ability to gather data will improve. Our survey of members has demonstrated that there have been really high levels of investment over the last, over the last decade. 144 million in 10 years, in fact, 14 million a year on average in orchards, greater efficiencies, labour-saving technology, efficient pack houses, state-of-the-art cold storage. And we've seen big changes in the way the orchards are looking over the last 10 years. Wildflower alley strips, a focus on biodiversity. Photographs, they're demonstrating sequentially flowering wildflower mixes that are supporting beneficial populations throughout the year. So predators and pollinators working really hard to support that crop. We've had a change in the structures and the productivity that those orchard structures can deliver. Twin stem systems, taller hedge-like rows of trees, efficiency improving management systems and harvesting tech. Our survey of the British Apples and Pears membership has demonstrated great strides have been taken in all these areas and shows that the growers are really looking forward and how they can improve systems and efficiencies. Labour, we can't have a conversation about farming without talking about labour. It does continue to be a challenge. British growers, like all businesses, have seen some serious cost increases. We've again worked with John Pelham of Anderson's this year, analysing the impact of the national living wage since 2015. Our sector has seen a significant wage increase. Don't forget that British growers pay all workers at national living wage, regardless of their age. The Anderson's report has also clearly shown, I'm so sorry, too many pieces of paper. The Anderson's report has clearly shown that there are significant increases in cost across the piece. And growers also have been additionally challenged by lack of availability and also then low productivity in some workers. We cannot forget the impact of the cost of COVID-safe working either. Even despite the lifting of restrictions in the coming weeks, we will all need to protect our workforce. The sum total of cost increases since 2015 on a pack of British Gala has been 13.6p. We all need to work together to help manage these cost increases. And our campaign as a whole, helping sell the crop, well, we've been working really hard and we work really well with this lovely agency, Spider, who support us in our PR. Their work so far this year has delivered a really impressive 225 million reach. So this is 225 consumers that we've already spread the good news about the crop for. This is an advertising value of over £1 million and a return of investment currently running at 51 to 1. In 2020, our total campaign reached 817 million consumers. It's a really impressive increase. It's a really impressive figure, and it shows an increase year on year of how many we're reaching, and that delivered us an ROI of 31 to 1. An apple a day is still core of our message. It's the best snack. We all know this stuff, don't we now? It's the best snack, it's portable, and with overwhelming evidence that it is good for you. And now we can demonstrate that it's also good for the UK's environment too. We're really confident that we're going to have another outstanding crop this year, ready on retailer shelves for the official launch of the British season on the 4th of October. It's a very broad and very, I've lost my words, do apologise. But the campaign this year, we will have the sustainability report at the heart of it, all at the heart of our messaging, demonstrating to British consumers how a homegrown top fruit is the best choice, how our members really care about the future of the British countryside. Our ambassadors, carefully chosen to ensure that we are reaching as broad a demographic as possible, picked for their established credentials around British food, farming, produce, and talking to our key target groups. We've invested in some case studies. We've spoken to 7 growers from our membership, and these case studies focus on all elements of production, from integrated pest management through to robotics, from the largest grower through to one of the smallest in our membership, some of whom will also be the voice of the campaign come the season launch. We're going to invest in media drops this year. We're planning that British apples are going to appear on as many shots as possible, on TV and in print, with drops to all mainstream consumer productions. We're going to go out on location. We'll be delivering an event with one of our ambassadors in an orchard, hopefully live, but possibly virtual. Press and influencer guests can learn how to pick apples, talk with growers, and learn firsthand about the skill that goes into putting fruit on retailer shelves. We have an always-on trade and consumer press office, a constant drumbeat about brilliant British apples and pears and how an apple a day is the best thing that you can add to your diet. Coupling the media drops with some wonderful photography showing the beauty of the orchards and the fruit, maybe the people too. We're going to create collateral that will be available to all outlets, including PR and comms teams within all the retailers. Let us know if you need anything. We're going to be investing in dark advertising. If you've not come across this before, it's a very effective way of driving consumer through retailer doors. It's a type of online advertising visible only to the advert's publisher and the intended target group. It doesn't appear on our social media account pages, and delivery is informed by previous search choices and accounts already followed by the viewer. This way, we can select to reach consumers by the retailer they engage with on social media, and ensure that they know how to find British top fruit on shelf and online, helping bring customers right to the shelf and helping them make the right choice. So our ambassadors this year, I'm really pleased to say that Raymond Blanc will be back working with us again. He proved to be the most fantastic investment last year. He is really passionate about eating local, eating seasonal, and really wants to be supporting British growers again. We now have him tied into a 3-year term of promoting British apples and pears, building on the success of what he did for us last year. He now, of course, has a new, broader demographic following his series Simply Raymond, and it has increased the number of people that he is speaking to. We're also really pleased to say they've got JB Gill of JLS. Now, this depends what age you are really, but actually JLS remain incredibly popular and are back out on tour from the 1st of October. So actually having JB as part of our team, for those who aren't familiar, actually since his success singing, he's actually moved into farming. So he actually has quite a strong voice and is quite well known. I mean, Charlotte was, smiled with delight and said, oh, he's lovely, when we said who we were going to be working with. So we're hoping he's going to be delivering great things for us this season. I mean, he's going to obviously further broaden our audience and our consumer appeal, and he is very social media savvy. So we're going to let him take over our Instagram feed for a short while. He'll be reporting from orchards, he'll be talking about the crop, and also he'll be talking about the growers he'll be meeting. Now, back to Charlotte in a minute, but first we have a message from one of our ambassadors. I'm going to stop sharing and I'll let the team at the agency share the film. Can everybody hear that okay? No. See, this is always the challenge with Zoom, isn't it? It's so much nicer if you're all in the same room.
I am so proud for the 2nd year running to support British apples and pears. You may think odd that it is actually a Frenchman who is promoting British apples and pears. There's a reason why. My mom taught me at a very early age that food is all about seasonality, close to home, and you don't import it from millions of miles away. So it's fresher, better nutrients, better taste, better texture, better flavor. It's truly exciting to see British apples and pears back on our supermarket shelves. So important. It is local, it is seasonal, it is your farmers, and it has got huge value. So important to us.
Now, back to Charlotte.
Thanks, Sarah. Now, I'm sure that will have inspired some questions in you. So just ask away. You can just click on the chat box and ask a question. Now, while you're doing that, I'm going to irritatingly ruin your concentration by asking you a question. This is the first of 2 polls today, and we will have the results at the end. Poll 1, here is your question. Please pay attention. What do you think is the most important health benefit of eating an apple a day? Sadly, my answer, which is it's not a biscuit, is not listed. The answers you have: lower cholesterol, protect against diabetes, prevent obesity, protect against heart disease, or gut health. Just click the one you fancy and press submit at the bottom. And as I say, we will look at the results of that later. Now let's move on to sustainability, one of those words which can mean everything or frankly nothing at all. Now, before we hear from Professor Manning, the author of the first edition of British Apples and Pears Sustainability Report, watch this. Now, I'm hoping that at this point we will hear a film talking about sustainability with growers all over the country. But hey, it's Zoom, so they could be on mute or not happening at all. Let's hope.
There you go.
Some beautiful pictures of orchards there. Can't wait to get back out there. I'm sure that will have raised some questions for you. The best people to talk to will be our growers who are coming up in our panel session in just a few moments. First, though, let's hear from Professor Louise Manning from the Royal Agricultural University. She's been surveying growers about sustainability in their orchards and in their wider businesses, and I'm delighted to welcome her to give her insights.
Hi, thank you, Charlotte, for the introduction. We've been asked by British Apple and Pears to undertake a piece of work to consider how British growers are delivering sustainable value in the orchards, pack houses, and through to the eating experience. And today we're just giving an insight into some of the early findings with the full report due later in the year. Today I'm going to talk specifically about sustainable value and how British apple and pear growers are delivering economic, natural and social value to their customers, and what this means in terms of the growers and the grower delivery of the value proposition. This means that growers, through their practices and activities, are providing nutritious fruit at an affordable price. So they're delivering both economic and social value. And they are producing and packing the fruit with minimum impact on the environment. And where possible, through the case studies, we've seen a range of examples where growers are enhancing the environment and biodiversity further. So delivering that third element of sustainable value and natural value. We've also been considering the 17 Sustainable Development Goals and how these SDGs are being delivered each and every day by British apple and pear growers and packers. And we've had many conversations with growers and packers about how they're delivering to the Sustainable Development Goals that you can see on this slide: good health and well-being, affordable and clean energy, decent work and economic growth, climate change, and partnerships for the goals. So working with others to deliver sustainable business practices. And it's this combination of sustainable value and the SDGs that are demonstrating the offering that growers are giving not only to their customers, but also to the consumer. And through the case studies and the results of the grower survey, which we've also undertaken, we can showcase initiatives around driving responsible consumption and production, SDG 12, and through precision agriculture techniques and regenerative farming approaches, considering improvements for life on land, SDG 15, and life below water 2, which is SDG 14. And developing farming systems that deliver to all of these goals and drive sustainable value are key as we consider the future developments with apple and pear growing in this country. But the case studies have also highlighted circularity in its wider sense, and how British apple and pear growers are moving from what might have been considered in the past an extractive business model to one that transitions to a circular model of business. And on the next slide, we talk about that in more detail. So when we think of circular business models, we think of those that build economic, natural, and social capital within the business, what I've described as value a little earlier. And we've got examples from the growers of how they are re-engineering their business systems and designing their business models from the orchard through to the pack house, through to retail shelf, that are being designed to reduce waste and pollution, where products and materials are being utilized more effectively, so there's better resource management and the regeneration of natural systems. And this is where we can focus on this business thinking that is developing. And what I've put on this slide here is the integration, I can't even say it, the integration of both biological and technical life cycles from orchard all the way through to that eating experience. And over the last 30, 40 years, British apple and pear growers have been investing heavily in those technical cycles, looking at how they can develop and implement farming and packhouse systems so that technology drives improvements and benefits in terms of how apples and pears are grown, harvested, processed, and packed. But also, as we think about sustainability in its wider sense, and both economic value as well as environmental or social value, how we can recover, reuse, restore, recycle at all supply chain stages. And technology, as it comes into the farming system, is now allowing us to predict more. So not just predicting potentially what the weather's like, which may or may not be highly effective, but also thinking about how we can predict from blossom through to picking, potential yields, sizing of fruit, and how we can develop diagnostics and early warning systems in the orchards. And increasingly, how we can build decision tools that support at all stages of the supply chain. But we can't just focus on technical life cycles, and technology is also helping us to really understand the biological life cycles that we depend on and how we are regenerating living systems, soil, trees, and the wider environment. What's interesting as we think about that is that evolution and at the bottom of the slide, I've got the evolution from agriculture 3.0 to 5.0, that transition towards greater automation and replacement of certain mundane tasks, but also the application of artificial intelligence and machine learning by growers at a time when we are embracing and seeking to gain greater understanding of those biological life cycles. And it's that element of smart farming and smart agriculture, indeed climate smart agriculture, which sits within agriculture 5.0. But we have to recognise that each farming situation is different, even each orchard is different. And there's not just one blueprint of how we integrate biological and technical life cycles, nor is there one area where we have completely equal experience and skill sets. And that combination of the biological, the technical, the human and technical interface is really important when we think of delivering sustainable value. But what is key is the way in which British apple and pear growers are developing their businesses and orchard practices to provide sustainable value now, but also in the future, from the orchard through to the eating experience. So that was just a snapshot of the insights that we're looking to gain in the sustainability report. I'm going to be here for the panel at the end of the talk, so if anyone's got any further questions, please do ask. Otherwise, I'm going to hand back over to Charlotte.
Thanks, Louise. As Louise says, we need some questions for our panel. Otherwise, I'm just going to ask all the things that I'm interested in, and really we don't want to go there. So please get your questions in good time. Now, while you do that, I'm going to ask the second of our poll. Oh, I'm not. I'm going to go back to Sarah first for the takeaway, the main point she wants to take away from that report. So I do apologise, Sarah.
No, Charlotte, it's fine. I mean, everybody can see just a small snippet of some of the key findings that we've had from the survey and the report so far. So these figures have been drawn from a sample of 4,000 hectares of orchards. The respondents to the survey were absolute perfect cross-section of the industry. So we had replies from a grower with just over 10 hectares through to people with 1,200 hectares. So we can be confident it's a truly representative sample of what's happening in our industry. And you can see there's some lovely figures in there, and this is just a tiny proportion of the data that we've been gathering. Now, as Louise said, the report will be available in full towards the season launch. We're still working our way through the information we've been given and refining the messaging. So Charlotte, yeah, it really is back to you now for the next poll.
See, I'm so keen to ask you questions. Let's have our second poll. Again, it's multiple choice. You can't possibly go wrong. It's a more complicated question, though, I would argue. Which of these orchard or packhouse practices do you think are the most important to help the UK reach net zero by 2050? Solar PV, alternative energy generation or renewable generation supplier, electric vehicles, composting or mulching, and investment in dynamic controlled atmosphere, which is DCA, or new controlled atmosphere storage. Again, just pick the one you want and submit. And we will talk about them when we come to the end of our panel session. So if I can welcome back Sue Calcutt and Professor Louise Manning, and also joining us for our panel are three growers. Now I'm going to slightly lazily let them introduce themselves, starting with James Simpson. James.
Yes, good afternoon, and thank you for inviting me to be on the panel. I'm Managing Director of Adrian Scripps Limited, and we're essentially a top fruit business with 350 hectares of orchards, also growing grapes and blackcurrants. We're end to end, so we put a tree in the ground and we put an apple on the retailer's shelf.
Okay, let's now hear from Tony Harding.
Yes, hi, thank you for inviting me on the panel. My name's Tony Harding. I'm the Technical Procurement Director at Worldwide Fruit. So Worldwide Fruit is 50% owned by Fruition Producer Organisation, which roughly covers around 40 growers in the UK, growing a range of tree fruit and soft fruit. So involved end to end in terms of production and also in terms of the final sales. Thank you.
And Ben Bardsley.
Yeah, hi, Charlotte. Thank you for inviting us on today. I'm Ben Bardsley, Manager Director of Bardsley England. We're also a fruit grower like James. We farm over 850 hectares, doing the whole supply chain from tree to supermarket. But probably why I've been invited onto this is because we've recently set up a tech business called BX, which is looking at a lot of what Louise was talking about, quantification of data, and then incentivizing growers to be more sustainable in how they approach fruit growing.
I want to come on to tech in just a moment. So Ben has just really well volunteered himself for that. Sarah, can I start with you? A lot of talk about sustainability. Are you saying that British top fruit, British apples and pears, are better, more sustainable than anywhere else in the world?
We know that we're one of the best. What we're doing with this piece of work and with the reports that will follow on is actually placing us in our sort of correct position. I mean, we have a feeling that actually because of the skill of the growers, because of the way that we farm, the ethics of the system, that we're right up there. And clearly, if you're going to buy a piece of fruit, you want it to come down the road from James or Ben, as opposed to coming from, you know, a foreign country. But we don't have the data. So the big piece of work that we're going to do in the future actually is working with some different systems to how we capture accurate data to be able to reliably state exactly where we stand.
Okay, let's talk to the growers about this. James, how would you say the way that you grow, your farming has changed? And what one change would you say is more key to the future?
I think what we've seen in recent years is a natural progression of growing systems, and that's been fundamental to many growers maintaining their sustainability and their profitability, because the two have to go hand in hand. So we have, the phrase is probably wrong anyway, or counterproductive, but we have intensive orchard systems now where we're planting at a higher density, and the productivity from those orchards is far greater than traditional orchards. That automatically makes everything more sustainable. But we've changed our growing practices. So we're very much more, as Ben alluded to, we're very much more data driven. Many in the industry have been for some time, and Ben's taking it to another level, I would suggest. But we're monitoring everything we do and adjusting what we do accordingly. And at the forefront of everything we do is the care for the environment. So environmental strips, corners of orchards, anywhere we can make a positive biodiversity net gain, we're doing. But we're also introducing more technology in terms of automation and robotics, which reduces our carbon footprint because it reduces the energy in what we're inputting. So rather than have a large number of people that we're servicing and working with, we've now got more sophisticated machinery that we've introduced, and there's definitely a gain there as well.
There is photographs cycling through on the monitor behind you. People may have noticed that one of them is a fence with what looks like a cat flap in it. Talk us through that.
Yeah, well, that's something we've been doing for many years, and that's part of our sort of, again, back to our care for the environment. I think most growers and most farmers will know that a badger can be a pretty destructive animal, but it's a great animal unless you're perhaps a dairy farmer. It's a great animal to have in the countryside. So we would put traditionally a rabbit fence around our orchards. But a badger would go straight through a rabbit fence. So rather than have the rabbit fences continually taken to pieces by badgers, we put up a new rabbit fence, wait until the badger makes a hole in it, and then we effectively put a cat flap in for the badger to work through. So it's a badger flap effectively, so they have access. So we're working with nature, I suppose you could say. That's a very direct work with nature relationship.
Badger flaps. Who knew? Certainly not me. Tony, can I ask you the same question? What sorts of things have changed? And what do you think are the most important things?
Yeah, I think James covered it really well. I think the only thing I would add to that, I suppose, is in regard to the choice around varieties. I think now there's, when you talk about the total farm sustainability position, the choice of variety is absolutely critical going forward, not just from the financial perspective, but also in terms of climate resilience. We're seeing we're only we know too well the last couple of months, how difficult the weather's been, and I think what we need to be, have an eye on is, not just what's planting, what's right for now, but what we're planting now for the future. And, very much we need to be in a mindset of, we know we're going to have more unpredictable weather, probably going to become more challenging in terms of sort of heat units, sunshine intensity, lack of rainfall, things that I would say probably, 20, 30 years ago were less of a challenges. But now, for me, I think what we see within our grower base is very much a more forward-thinking kind of vision in terms of what they plant to mitigate some of them likely stresses that we're probably all going to face.
Ben, let's move on and talk about tech. People like me are always going to ask about robots, which I will leave for the moment and come back to. What are you doing with data in particular?
So I think the key thing is, and I've used this a few times, apologies if anyone's ever heard this before, but agriculture today is like the stock exchange in 1960. A lot of people using pen and paper, gut intuition, knowledge, screaming at each other to get things done and trying to make money in the process. Whereas if you look at the stock exchange today, it's a very different environment. It's data driven, it's algorithms, it's very quiet. It's people still getting paid in the right way, but very much done by computers. So my vision of my company going forward is to become exactly like the stock exchange, but rather than taking that 40, 50 year vision, I think we can get this cracked by 2030. And the way that we're going to do that is by pioneer the technology. So the technology doesn't exist. We don't have a platform in the world currently that does everything we needed to do. There is lots of wonderful ag techs doing great data collecting across the whole variation of the supply chain, starting in orchards, going through storage, packing, distribution, and into the final consumer. But there is no software package that does it all. And that's what we're currently developing, have been doing for 16 months.
And what exactly do you want it to do, and how will that change the way you work?
So the really important thing is it's a carbon capture tool. So we're looking at exactly how much carbon we are sequestering as a business. And then we are looking to make a net number, which we can then trade to either corporates who are desperate for it. There's a huge carbon market creating, or more importantly, the end consumer, which is our ultimate goal, is to allow the end consumer to buy that carbon credit through the price of the fruit.
We've heard a lot about labour, and we will move on to discuss this in just a moment. I just want to talk briefly about robots because, as you'll know, people in media are obsessed with robots. Are they anywhere near being useful in your businesses? Ben, let's start with you.
Yeah, 100%, but we've got to help them. I go back to these wonderful ag tech companies, of which there are many, and some of them are looking at automated picking, some of them are looking at automated vision cameras, others are looking at automated weeding. So everything that we currently do, there are companies out there who are either early stage or now starting to get to become commercial with their product. But we have an obligation to help them in their journey. They need incubation space to be able to develop this technology, to test the technology, to get feedback on why it's not working. If you look at the greatest business in the world, let's call it, I think Amazon is one of the greatest businesses in the world. And the reason why they are is actually because their feedback loops are extremely small. They know when things go wrong and they change it very quickly. We would never know as a consumer what goes wrong, what doesn't, but there is a massive engine that works behind that. And that's what ag tech needs, is this feedback loop of growers such as ourselves to support them in their journey, because we all want it. Yeah, James, myself, every other grower on this call right now would say, if you could deploy this technology into my business, would you take it, yes or no? Well, of course, the answer is yes, because it's going to reduce our costs, increase our efficiency, increase our margin, and then make long-term sustainability for our business. But we have an obligation to support these ag techs through their development journey.
Tony, how are you feeling about robots?
Yeah, well, they're not far away is the answer to that. There's a good example in terms of what's going on in other countries. New Zealand is probably the closest, and America in terms of deploying robotic harvesting at commercial level on a fairly large scale. They are 2 years into using the systems down there to harvest fruit. Within 2 years, they'll be picking significant hectareage down there. But what you need is orchard systems that are fit for robotic systems, and that takes time. And going back to what Ben said, this isn't a light switch moment where if the technology is available, everybody's going to be able to use it, because you need to grow a particular type of tree that allows the robotics to thrive. I think connected to that is just it looks great on paper, but they're a big investment for farmers as well. And, you know, I think when we think about this whole value stream, you know, there needs to be enough profit in it for everybody to allow growers to reinvest in technology that, you know, is going to help everybody else in the future in terms of the cost price piece as well. So I think it is a joined up vision on this, but, you know, it's not far away, Charlotte, that's for sure.
James.
Yeah, I mean, there's some very quick things that we can activate, and there's some low-hanging fruit, pardon the pun, but, you know, automating a pack house is much quicker and easier than automating an orchard. Automating a pack house, you've got a controlled environment and you can pinch ideas that are readily available in other industries, and we've done exactly that in our facility. So we've got automatic case filling, automatic tray filling, automatic loose fruit packing. It's all robotic, and that was relatively easy to do. It's expensive. We've invested sort of 8 to 10 million in storage and packing in the last 5 to 8 years. Automating the orchard, it's a race. It's a horse race, really. You know, you can look at pieces of equipment in isolation, but that would be wrong, because what we've discovered in recent years, and particularly in the last 18 months, are that when we look at something like robotic harvesting, we actually need to look at crop estimation, crop product application. So we're looking at drones, or we're looking at, actually, why are we looking at drones when actually we could be looking at something on a tractor that drives through the orchard every week? Why are we thinking about somebody sat on a tractor when we could have a fully automated tractor driving through the orchard, scanning the tree, adjusting the sprayer as it goes, and doing our crop estimation? That can be uploaded into a robotic harvester that drives itself through the orchard and knows where the crop load is. We're getting very close to that. And it'll come fairly quickly when one or two things fall in place. And we, like Ben, believe that actually one or two things do need to fall in place, and it needs to be a little bit more joined up than it is at the moment. And that's the challenge. We've sat in meetings recently with software developers, machinery developers, and they've presented fantastic cases. And we've said to them, well, hang on, we're a grower and we do something slightly differently than what you're presenting. So this feedback loop is massively important that Ben alludes to, but we're getting close, but we're not quite there at the moment for full automation in the orchard.
And Charlotte, if I could just kind of,
yeah, sure.
Just follow on from that. I mean, the key thing is what we've done is we've brought that talent, those software engineers, into our business. So we employ these people, and that is the key thing: is they completely and utterly understand what we're trying to achieve, versus a third party who is trying to sell you effectively a product. They work with you in the early days, but effectively trying to sell you something. You know, we need to attract fantastic talent on farm. And this is kind of, you know, I'm 35, you know, I've been in the industry 8 years. I've had a great journey up to now, but I'm only getting going. I really am only getting going. And I want to bring fantastic talent who would never normally go anywhere near farming into the industry, because our jobs are so varied. You know, we have some incredible roles within our business now, which, you know, you look at it and go, God, you're tangible, you're environmentally friendly, you're ESG, you're ethical, you know, your product is great tasting, you've got a great culture. Well, tell me the downsides. And this is what we need to kind of preach to the world, that fruit farming is cool and we should attract the cool talent into us.
After that, I feel really mean in turning immediately to one of the downsides. Tony, can I ask you about labour and the prospects for shortages in the 2021 season of seasonal workers?
Yeah, well, I think we're in a little bit of an unknown period. I think what you know, I can only speak really from what I'm hearing from conversations that we're having with our growers. Maybe Ben and James are probably a little bit better placed to answer directly. But I think there is concern, but also some hope as well. I think one of the things the industry has been very good at in the last couple of years is, you know, we're trying to provide an environment on the farm that encourages people to come back. You know, the living accommodation, the worker welfare systems that are in place, that they've been transformed over the last 4 or 5 years as an industry. And I think what we are offering is, you know, an environment there that will hopefully encourage people to come back. You know, and at the end of the day, they're having to be paid living wage as a minimum. You know, there are opportunities to earn beyond that as well for engaged workers who work hard and put the time and effort in. So, you know, there is good prospects, but there's no getting away from it, Charlotte. It's going to be it's going to be an ongoing challenge, I'm sure, for the industry, especially as I think, as you know, we talk about some of the stuff we're all doing here, that the crop's only heading in one direction in terms of sort of the volume. You know, so getting that all harvested in the future is, it's going to become a little bit more of a challenge, I would have said, so still work to be done, but looking more hopeful probably than it was last year from our perspective.
James, how's it looking for you?
I think it's going to be an incredible challenge, actually. I don't want to put too much of a downer on it, but our early experience has been that there are several things in play here. And one is the availability of labour per se. The labour just isn't readily available. I mean, we're extremely low levels of unemployment here in the southeast. It might not be the same around the UK, but rural unemployment is generally low. Also, rural connectivity in terms of getting to and from work is very difficult for many people. So that's if we look at local populations rather than look at the availability through the SWPS scheme or from returnees coming in from Europe. There are challenges around that I think have been well documented, but not just around the challenges that have been well documented. I think what we've got to look at is you have a combination of Brexit and COVID coming into play. And while we're about to opening up actually isn't really going to help agricultural fresh food businesses very much, because the big draw will be the hospitality sector. And we're already seeing here in the southeast, particularly in Kent, the loss of workers that have been in packing facilities in recent months. I know of 4 very large facilities that are continually running understaffed. And part of that is that some workers have decided to go home. They feel safer at home because of the COVID situation. The rest is that actually the hospitality sector is opening up. They're desperately short of labour. They will pay good wages, which we will match, but there's that opportunity to be in a totally different environment that they haven't been able to be in for a year or 18 months, whereas they have been able to be in a pack house or in an orchard. So yeah, I think it's early days to say that we will find enough staff for this coming harvest. I think it will be a real challenge. We're seeing the returnee numbers, so those are the people that are coming from overseas back to us who've worked for us before. We're finding those numbers being at the moment confirming sort of 25 to 30% below where we were a month ago. So within the last month to 6 weeks, we've seen a significant drop off in the availability of labour locally and the prospects for returnees. I think there'll be some real challenges this year. In fact, we think there'll be so much of a challenge that we've invested significantly in semi-automated harvesting platforms where we can reduce our picking staff significantly. And not to put it mildly, we've invested a significant amount of capital in that this year to reduce our requirement for staff. And I think that's the only way we can go. And that's capital replacing labour. It's a classic.
Louise, just before we move on to discuss marketing and indeed exports, which I can see are coming up quite a lot on the chat, I just wanted to talk a bit about sustainability. We've heard from 3 relatively big growers. From your work, is this something that is actually across the industry now?
In terms of the approach to sustainability, I think going back to what I was saying earlier, the businesses involved in British Apple and Pears are quite diverse. So what it means to be sustainable for a large business, indeed a business with a pack house, is a completely different business model to smaller businesses. And what we're also seeing is a divergence in approach. There are some businesses where the apple and pear orchards are part of a larger business, so they're looking at an integration across their whole farm. And there are some people that are very much focused on apple and pears. I think what is interesting in our report is the work's been looking at pollination and the types of bees that are pollinating, and as a result, how you might change orchard practices. And I would say that's something that all farmers would embrace. When you get to investment in capital investment, that's where it's hard for a range of different growers. For growers that are large and on a trajectory, borrowing money is potentially easier than for some of the smaller growers. So I think that's the real challenge when you go forward with the investment in capital. How do we ensure that there is that economic value in the supply chain where all businesses that wish to invest can invest? We've seen in other sectors, for example, that as they become more technology and automation intensive in the growing stages, that there then becomes a barrier to entry because of the capital cost to go in. So I think it's a real balance when we think of sustainability.
Thank you. Sarah, a question for you. Can you measure the impact of marketing activity with Raymond Blanc on sales of British apples and pears?
Good question. Yes, in a way. So not forgetting that Raymond is part of the overarching PR campaign, which is entirely designed around raising awareness of the British crop with consumers and ensuring that they know where to find the fruit and where it is on shelf and where it is online, as we've talked about before. So actually, to be able to say Raymond Blanc has helped sell more on his own, I don't think we will be able to do. But actually what we do, of course, is analyse the impact. So we look at the number of outlets that will carry the story, the channels that want him on as an interviewee. So, I mean, last year, obviously, he did quite a lot for us in terms of TV. He also did a radio day. We also had social media. We had a number of really good articles with really substantial readerships. So it's about that awareness piece. So we are analysing in everything that we do, and the agents are exceptionally good at looking at the impact and looking at the return on investment and ensuring that the money's being put in the right place, but also the fact that we're looking for the biggest impact possible. So, obviously having names like Raymond and JB on the case will reach as many people as possible, which of course is going to drive sales.
Okay, let's move to exports. I'm going to mash two questions together, panel. Sorry, if you can answer them both at the same time, just to save a bit of time. The first one comes from Louisa Cheshire. What does the panel think about the prospects for British apple and pear exports to India following the latest trade deal announcement? And then if you could also answer this one too, from Phil Aycock. What's the export potential for the famous English Bramley apple? Who wants to go first? I'm going to be kind and let you volunteer. Okay, Sarah, well done.
So as I said, we're very fortunate because we have members of our export group on the call as well. So I can hand over to James and to Ben in a second. But we do have an export group for British apples and pears. We have been talking to DEFRA and the Department of Trade. And we have also been having conversations recently with Simon Anning, who's our contact, about the requirements of this India trade deal. At the moment, we don't have a huge amount of detail on it. We do know that they have set some requirements. So we've had a phytosanitary challenge in terms of they're looking for product, treatment of the fruit, but actually now what we're coming down to actually is cold treatment. So we have a protocol which is actually easily implemented by exporters, and there is a willingness to proceed. Obviously the health situation in India at the moment has stalled the discussion somewhat, but we do have a very regular dialogue with those that are in charge of the deal. English Bramley, of course, Mr. Aycock's going to say that one. So just for everybody else in the meeting, we are actually currently working on a PGI application for English Bramley. This is about setting quality standards, saying that what you're getting is truly the brilliant English Bramley, Mr. Aycock. And so this will, the labelling will be obviously available for line sold within the UK, but also then for export. So a guarantee that it is the high quality product that everybody loves. And I could just actually mash in another one as well, because Robert Rendell was asking about the opportunities for the 75, 85 mil fruit. And of course that they're part of an export program ongoing.
Ben.
So to answer Phil's question about the Bramley, certainly how I see it, we don't need to export Bramley. We can sell every single Bramley we grow. And if we grow it and we can sell it in our country for a fair price, then we should be absolutely focusing on that. But there is, of course, a great British public that don't really like a 70 mil plus dessert apple, as Robert said. And the key thing is that we as an industry work together to find the correct home, which is sustainable for that product. Now, our business this year, we've got a plan to export every 75 mil gala and up to other countries, of which one will be India, amongst others. I know James has been very successful this year with that. We're in high demand. People, the British brand is good abroad, but you have to get it right. This is not a send it and hope. You have to be super focused on quality, as we are with all our other customers, and make sure that you get the repeat order. But it's more about your brand than potentially the country is coming from. However, there are great countries that have done it as a brand, such as New Zealand. They're very famous for what they do for apples and lamb. Chile are also another great example of a country that's exported as a country. So we've got this committee going on now as British Apples and Pears, where we're having these conversations, trying to understand, can we work together? Is it the right thing to do? Should we be levying it so we have a fund to be able to do that? Or should we be working in siloed environments and just concentrating on our own businesses? My personal feeling is we should be doing it together. And then your own brand is what is the icing on the cake when it arrives in that country.
James, where have you exported to and how have you done it?
Yeah, the majority of fruit we've exported has been into the Middle East, which most people would disregard as being the premium market. The Far East is obviously where returns to growers can be much better. But we've found it a very good exercise, and we've invested heavily in it. We've supplied just shy of 100 containers of 20 pallets per container into the Middle East. The returns have been acceptable, and they take away all the 75 mil plus fruit that is difficult to find a home for here in the UK. But there are a couple of fundamental things that growers need to and exporters need to be aware of. It is the best product you're exporting. It isn't something that you just don't want to see again. It has to be the best product you're exporting, and you have to be in it. So you can't dip a toe in, step out, dip a toe in, step out. You have to offer your customer some continuity and consistency. So you're in for several seasons, and you have to make a go of it. We're looking at India, everybody's looking at India, we're looking at the Far East, but there are real challenges about getting the quality to the shelf with an overseas retailer. Because we see a lot of imported product come into the UK, we think it's easy to do. It's a real challenge, and it's not something to be taken lightly. So yeah, we're investing heavily in it and working hard on it.
I'm aware of the time, so I'm just going to squeeze in one last question, which comes from Chris Rose. What are the key requirements to increase UK pear production?
Sustainable return to growers. Very simple. Do the maths. Yes, there's a market for British grown pear. There will be a market for British grown pear, but we need to look at that market. In the Northern Hemisphere season, it's almost exclusively conference pear, which we know grows well in the UK. But actually just do the maths on the model of the orchard, and I think you'll find you need to be paid a little bit more than we're being paid at the moment for it.
Tony?
Yeah, I'll echo that. Alongside the normal kind of technical requirements, it's not a product you want to be putting on suboptimum locations. You need everything going in your favour from a production perspective. You need to invest in the system of production, which isn't cheap, as James says. So yeah, that price recovery piece is really important. Now, one of the challenges we have from a UK market perspective, compared to say our European competitors, is moving non-class one fruit with any kind of value is extremely difficult and challenging. So yeah, it's sort of stacked against us a bit at the minute financially. I will say that, but we do have good sites to do it. It's just trying to get everybody aligned in the right place, because we can do it.
Just before we get our poll results, I just want to ask all three growers, on a scale of 1 to 10, how excited are you about the 2021 season? Let's start with you, Tony. Yeah,
I'd have said at the minute I'm an 8. I can see potential out there. I've got everything crossed at the minute in terms of making sure what fruit is on the trees stays there following the weather we've had. But I think normally in difficult seasons, we find a way of producing it as an industry, and we know at the end of the season we produce a great looking, eating quality product. So there's always excitement going into every harvest.
James?
Well, I'm always excited about growing top fruit, and I'm a cup half full man. So yeah, the prospects are always good as far as I'm concerned. A real challenge this year, though. April, the coldest April for 60 years. The driest April here in Kent, we didn't record a millimetre of rain. And we're not sure what we've produced at the moment. So an exciting challenge. I'm more a 9 about the challenge than a 9 about the prospects.
Ben?
Well, being a cup 3/4 full man, I'm obviously super excited. I think, we're doing a great thing as an industry. We are growing more top quality fruit year in, year out as an industry. There is more cohesion happening. And I really feel there's a great movement with our retail partners on how we sell our fruit. The export just is the cherry on the top to get that 75 plus apple into the right market. And we're starting to see the returns that we deserve for the effort and energy that goes into producing the humble British apple every year.
Well, thank you all very much indeed for joining the panel. Right, let's get the results of those polls that we had earlier. Hopefully they will just flick up onto the screen. We had one about the health benefits of an apple. I still think it should be it's not a biscuit. Well, in a way it is. Prevent obesity is the biggest health benefit of eating an apple, you reckon? Gut health apparently is also very, very important, which is something I learned in preparation for this event. And our second poll, this is all about meeting the net zero by 2050. What's the most important thing you can do? Alternative energy generation or renewable generation supplier is what you reckoned. So thank you very much indeed for taking part in those polls. Now, if we can hand back to Sarah Calcutt.
Thank you. I'm just going to share my screen just because we have just a couple more slides. Here we go. Keep moving on technology. There we go. So I just get the nice bit to round up on the good news and the good work that's going on. So just go back, so start of season. So how we're working with two really amazing ambassadors, both of whom they're very excited about doing this. It's something they really believe in. So, you know, true spokespeople there. Obviously a massive media push and a very, very carefully targeted social spend. It means that we are doing everything we possibly can to support the retail partners and make sure that as many consumers as possible get all the right messages about how great these fruits are. Obviously sustainability, the report, we have some highlights now, but we're going to keep the powder dry. We're going to have the main body of the messaging and the report itself ready for October for the launch. We're going to be putting the facts and the report out in sort of two formats. So there'll be the consumer friendly messaging. There's the bits that actually responding to that insight investigation we did. And then obviously the heavier body of the report, which will come out to our retail partners. They'll go to the sales desks, but it will also go to MPs. It'll go to the entire contact list we have around decision makers. So just ensure that we're doing everything we can to just to raise awareness about how really good this industry is. And then obviously just to remind everybody about the 4th of October, watch, because you will see so much information and so much good news about the British industry come October. And my last bit now is to say thank you to everybody. I get to say thank you to Charlotte because it is an utter joy to have her with us today. I don't know how many of you actually wake up to Farming Today. I know I still do because I was conditioned as a child to always listen to Farming Today. It's when I wake up. Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, James. I definitely like to say thank you to the lovely Louise, who's been fielding the questions so well, and also to the team at Spider, who ensure that we keep rolling with this and we have impact. We have a number of channels where you could see the messaging. Please join the online community for British Apples and Pears, follow the accounts, and also if you have some great news as a grower that you'd really like us to share, some beautiful photography, any messaging you would like, that you feel will be valuable to the campaign as a whole, let us know. And also for our retail partners, if you feel there's something that we really should be doing to help you, please, please let us know. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks everyone.